Hello, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Hope we're feeling good. Not too many hangovers out there. Hope you all had a great night and a great first couple of days at IBC. I'm Mark Smith and I run the Accelerator Media Innovation Program here, which is featuring 8 amazing projects. Again, this year, we've run something like 35 projects now through this program over the last 5 years, and some astonishing, remarkable projects and proof of concepts that are being demonstrated here at IBC this year, right behind this stage at the Accelerator Zone. Just to give you a brief overview of the Accelerator program, it's what we call a framework for fast-track collaborative innovation. And that means that we bring together the champions who are the buyers of technology here at IBC, those that come and scour your stands for the latest tech. And we bring them together really to set challenges. We call them the champions, the buyers. They're the broadcasters, the studios, the content owners, rights owners, those that come and buy tech here. And they set a challenge that they want to try and solve. And it's not a holistic industry scale challenge, but it's connected to that in such a way that it's a sort of bite-size problem or challenge, that something that they want to solve or better understand. And that's the core ethos of the accelerators. It's about learning by doing, by hands-on experimentation. And it's a valuable way of working that I think more than 300 companies have really enjoyed and participated in this program so far. So the participants are the vendors who sell the tech to the champions. So they're the software application developers, the systems integrators, the cloud solution providers, et cetera, et cetera. So champions, participants, multinational, multi-company collaboration, and that's what this is all about, and solving problems within a matter of months. So with that overview of the program, it's my pleasure to introduce one of our great accelerators. This is a super accelerator, and it's called Connect and Produce Anywhere. It's somewhat sort of got a heritage of other projects that have come before it, in terms of this being another phase of development that has really been a natural progression, I think, of moving toward IP workflows. And so it's my pleasure to welcome this panel and one of our champions, and we'll see some of the other champions in a second, but one of our champions, Ian Wagden here, Senior Technology Transformation Manager for the BBC. Hello, Ian.
Hello.
Morning.
Good
How
morning.
are you feeling?
Can you hear me? Oh, well, it's Sunday at IBC, isn't it?
Sunday, yeah. Exciting stuff. Pleasure to welcome Ben Somerville from TechX.
Yeah.
Great, thanks for joining us. You are squadron leader, I think, aren't you, an engineering?
Squad leader.
We just go back to that.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. And then squadron leader and senior engineer at TechX.
That's right, yes.
Great. And then we've got Scott Davis, who has not only been a fantastic sort of almost project lead on this, right from the beginning when we started talking about this in December last year, believe it or not. And I should also say Microsoft is one of our sponsors of the program, as is AMD, of the whole Accelerator program. So thank you for that, and thank you for being a great, I think, wrangler, I think, is what you've been on this project of people and kit. And that's, thank you. We'll hear all about that. Pleasure to welcome Claire Wilkie, who's the founder and managing director of Limitless Broadcast.
Thank you.
Claire, thank you for joining us. And at the end here, an addition to this panel, because I think he's right, he's had his sleeves rolled up, and he's been in amongst it and setting and really solving some of the problems of getting the demo going here. And I have to say, it's amazing, and it's really amazing. We'll hear all about that from Liam Hayter there, who is product manager at VisRT. So cheers. Welcome everybody. So I'd like to start, actually, let's just reference some of the other champions, because I think, and participants, because it's a cast of many here. The BBC and Sky Sports, and we've got Dion here from Sky, who's been one of our lead kind of advisors as a champion, I think. You've been driving this as much as anything, so problem maker, yeah. Great to see you here. Then we have BT Media and Broadcast, Vodafone, TV2 from Denmark, DAZN, and it's great to see Caroline Newerton from DAZN over here. And then we've got Verizon, who joined this project as well as a champion. And I see a number of others that have been champions. Gordon Roxburgh there from Sky as well, and a few others that have been part of this journey since last year. On the participant side, as I mentioned, AMD and Microsoft, who've really been key to getting kit together, getting servers and machines and GPUs and things like that. TechX with Ben, VisRT, Grass Valley, Google Cloud, and amazing to see Microsoft and Google working collaboratively and together in this project. Grass Valley, I mentioned, Zigzee, open broadcast systems, InSync, Llama, Singular Live, and I see Mike's there. Sorry if I do forget anybody. It's just because I can see people here. So I think I've mentioned everybody on there. Yes. That's the team. So quite an extraordinary team, collaborating, working in an amazing spirit of innovation to get this project to where we are today, and it's pretty extraordinary. So let's begin and talk about the journey and where we started, Ian, if that's all right. How did this come together? What did you pitch?
I'm gonna present it actually. I'm gonna break the rules, Mark, because hey, that's what we do in Accelerators. I'm gonna stand up for a start because I need the energy, and I can see you all better at the back. So thanks for coming. And we got together actually with BT, Warner, DAZN, and a few others way back at the end of the last Accelerator, and kind of scratched our heads and started thinking about what are the big challenges that we wanted to do off the back of some of the work that we've done up till now. And what we all realised, I think, that actually at that point coming out of the pandemic, that how we resource live events particularly has really changed dramatically over the past few years. But we've got this kind of mix of things that are sort of on-site, remote working, we've got cloud-based workflows, we've got all of these things going on, but they're all slightly different, and a lot of them we sort of threw together in a bit of a panic and sort of unpicking them a little bit and going, is that really the right way to do it? So we wanted to kind of take a step back, I think, a little bit and just kind of review about actually where are some of the big challenges that we've got in this environment, and how can we as an end user community really just kind of come together and think about what we want as a kind of shared endeavor, rather than us all coming up with different solutions and then asking people to try and deliver those. And of course the answer was, it's not just do everything in the cloud, which is probably what most people are saying. You run an AI engine in the cloud and it will do everything for you. It's brilliant. But actually in the real world, we have to do lots of other things. So we have to make a choice about what kind of tools we want, and we need those tools to be able to talk to against each other. We want to avoid the use of different proprietary technologies to plug together and have conversion layers and gateways and all those kind of stuff that's in there. And more we want to focus on software deployment rather than sort of big hardware based things. And the beauty of software is we can just drop stuff in, we can change how we deploy it and all of that kind of stuff. And that's just at the kind of user layer. And if you look underneath that and you kind of get into actually what does the infrastructure layer look like, we've got all these different choices. We all know about the cloud, it's a wonderful thing. It's got things like hypervisors, which I don't get, but they're there, and I'm sure they do something really brilliant. And if anyone knows what it is, Scott will buy you a beer. We've got our on-premise solutions. Those are the ones I'm really familiar with as a broadcast engineer. I can kind of understand those, and I can work out how they all together. And then we've got this mythical thing called Edge. And the Edge is a wonderful place because it'll do millions of things for you, and the mobile operators will tell you that, and the cloud operators will tell you that. And then because I'm a little bit cheeky, I'll go up and say, yeah, but what does it mean for me? And how does that work? And what are the implications of that for me? And they say, it's brilliant, it's super low latency. And I say, yeah, but I can get to the cloud in 20 milliseconds under a frame of video. That's super low latency. I'm not going to give you lots of money for that. And then we start scratching our heads and go, actually, what the big challenge for me to go into the cloud is really connectivity. And if I have to send 8, 9, 10 cameras at full resolution up into the cloud and run services up in the cloud, actually that's a real challenge. And I can do that perhaps in a stadium where I've got good connectivity and stuff like that, but it's not so easy on location. So we have to think about that. And we've got all these different tiers of events. So we sat down with Ian and John from Warner and a few others, and we said, okay, well, we've got these broadcast dedicated fibers. Those are really cool. We can do those. We've got loads of gigabits per second. We can throw those, and we can do that's cool. Then we've got some venue supplied internet that may or may not be reliable. And we probably can only get away with 50 or so HD content in there. And we're really going to struggle sometimes with that connectivity, and it's a bit up and down. And then a lot of the scale, especially for live events, we're on these things in fields in the middle of nowhere, and we have to worry about other types of connectivity where we've got maybe tens of megabits. Or if you happen to be at a venue that charge you lots of money to get internet, you might not want to pay that amount of internet. So there's all sorts of constraints that we have that we've got to deal with. So we set this challenge. We wanted to sort of dynamically be able to move production around across all of the platforms. We want to make the choice about whether we work on-prem, whether we work remotely, whether we work on location. And we want to do it in such a way that our operations teams can feel that they can use whatever software they're familiar with. You know, you don't have to have a special version of a piece of software because you're running it in the edge and a different version in cloud and all that kind of stuff. And we wanted to be able to deploy the software in the best places that we could. And we wanted to try and make sure that the production experience wasn't impacted too much by bandwidth. And then we kind of drew it out, and BT Sport helped us a little bit now in TNT and Warner, obviously. And we said, okay, well, we've got all of these different components. This is how we do stuff. There's lots of things here. But you know what? We've got to have connectivity across here. We've got to have connectivity across here. We've got to have connectivity across here. And there's some stuff we've done in previous accelerators where we did sort of some 5G wireless cameras, for those of you who saw that last year. But we had this kind of big lens of going, okay, edge compute, and all of that kind of stuff. What is it? How are we going to make it work and all that? So that was really the kind of some more connectivity challenges in there. So that formed the basis of where we got to. I'm going to rush through some of this now. And when we sort of scratched our heads, and we go through the process, and we boil this down, we came up with this diagram. And I'm going to let Ben talk about this diagram because it's a technical block diagram, and I just did the fancy words. I did the fancy words at the top, and I just went, okay, well, actually, what is it that we're actually delivering here? Because that's one of the questions that people asked us a lot: is why is this different? So we said, okay, well, first is edge first. All right, we're not. Cloud is great, but I can go out there, I can buy a load of solutions on it. What is edge? Why do I want edge? And then secondly, actually, this problem of constrained bandwidth. How do we bring that together? And then this idea of being able to work from anywhere. These are the kind of three core themes that all of our applications have to fit in with. And underneath that, we've got this kind of thread of sustainability. So these are the things we think we know about edge. We can deploy it. We can sort of use it really as a mobile data center. So we don't have the big scanners going, what if I can just deploy a rack of kit in the back of a transit van or other vans are available at a venue, plug in some IP connectivity, hope that I don't lose the little caps off the end of the fiber, and everything will be lovely. But I know I really just kind of want to see what service I run and the choices of the service I run, not necessarily the choices of the vendors who've got the right APIs to make them run. How do I get the best vendor A's vision mixer working with the vendor C's replay servers, and how do I then take that stuff out and send it in, because I'm not only got to do my broadcast, I've got to provide some video refereeing, I've got to provide some local playback and all that. So all of these things point to edge as a really good stuff. Then we've got the connectivity, and of course the big question, latency. And I'm going to let Claire talk a little bit about latency, simply because you do it every day, and I just talk about it in theory, but I'll...
Yeah, before we do that, why don't you tell us a little bit about Limitless, first of all, and then we'll go into this.
Okay.
Because just so people can understand what it is that you do.
Hello, everybody. I'm the founder and managing director of Limitless Broadcast. We're a facilities and outside broadcast company specifically working in full remote production and cloud production. So we've been doing a lot of R&D work with Warner Bros. Discovery, TNT, and formerly BT Sport, and that's why we're on the Accelerator here today. And one of the biggest challenges we face is connectivity on site. Sometimes it's simply not there, and our client is wanting to be adventurous and pioneering in what they're doing and bringing more stories to life. So this is a great accelerator for us to be part of, because latency and constrained bandwidths are challenges that we find all the time. Thank you, Scott, because I'll just get carried away because I get excited about talking about this stuff. So some of the biggest challenges we face is obviously that delay, and our production teams, and one of the things that's really driving us as an OB company is how are we making it so production teams, camera operators, floor managers on site are empowered in their work. We're not asking them to do anything different. We're not asking them to, it's a 5-second delay, because one of the biggest challenges is if you have inconsistencies within your signals getting from one side to the other, especially if your audio and video are out. So it's better to have low latency that's consistent than inconsistency. But what we're really looking at is the interesting approach of edge computing. And if I'm honest, when I joined this, I didn't actually really know much about what that was. So I'm learning as we're going on this. And we're doing this as a collaboration, which is really exciting. And so I'm looking at how can we use edge in different sports that we cover, rugby, basketball, netball, and football, to enable some of the nuances that you get across different sports, such as TMO, match officials, such as analysts in rugby. They all need instant signal straight away. If you're doing that as a remote production, that's a challenge. So actually, there's some things that we'd like to have on site. And so that's where Edge as a tool is really helpful and useful for us. So yes, and then this comes into working anywhere. As you can see behind me, that's our gallery back at Limitless Space. This is our some of the projects that we've done. And this behind me here was a recent show that we did for the Lionesses Down Under. And that's literally all we had on site. So these cameras are siloed and individual feeds. We're not taking them into a truck or a vehicle on site. We've got a small rack of equipment which is in this building behind our presenter, but our cameras are essentially mini tiny OBs, and we're doing remote racking and return vision and comms run from our gallery offsite. So with us, it's looking at, in terms of working with creatives and executive producers, where are they wanting to put their teams? Where are they wanting to distribute their remote production and enable more content to be reached and stories to be told? So that's what is exciting about this accelerator.
So I think when we first talked about the project and you got interested in this, we talked about that sort of kind of the lightweight production that you guys bring,
Yes.
High quality lightweight production. But we talked about what does that mean from a sustainability point of view as well, and I think that's the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. I need to click the clicker.
We can talk about this one all day, and I think what we've really found out through this project is that we know there's a lot we don't know.
Yes, absolutely.
about this from a sustainability point of view. But it's definitely one of the things on our radar, isn't it? That
Absolutely.
Probably in a better position now. The kit is all assembled, and we're going to talk about that. But we're probably in a better position now to sort of talk about some of that, or at least start to understand and start to apply some metrics and mealement to it. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts when you first.
Yeah, totally. So we're all very well familiar with remote production now. We were doing it years before COVID, and then we all went into that remote workflow during COVID. And automatically we were sending less people to site, we were driving less hardware up and down the motorways, and we were looking at, okay, this is having a real impact on our reaching sustainability goals and driving broadcasters towards their net zero targets. And so one of the things we struggle with is actually what is quantifiable in terms of how we're measuring and tracking our carbon footprint and making sure that we're doing what we're saying and being truthful and honest about that. So I think in terms of cloud production, it's easier to be able to track what your carbon footprint is. We've seen that across other cloud productions that have been going on. And but now with Edge, it's looking at how can we also track that and make it quantifiable, and so we can be aligned with Albert sustainability goals and reaching net zero for our broadcasters.
We'll probably come back to that, but let's get to the main. It's my phone. Sorry. Let's get to the main part of this in terms of what have we really been doing from a building this infrastructure perspective. Ben, maybe you could talk to us a little bit about what we've been doing with TechX in the context of this project and the test environment and lab that we've been building at your place in Bracknell. Maybe you could walk us through some of that.
Sure, yeah. So we have a small data center that we host in our offices in Bracknell, and we give up one of the racks there to deploy a number of servers and some networking to facilitate this test lab. Of course, in the test lab, we need real production software applications that we can speak to each other, test and qualify on that hardware. So we brought together a number of these participants to try and get those applications onto the edge compute servers, which we'll look at in a second in the diagram. Those local edge compute servers, I suspect that's me, sorry, are provided by Dell and AMD in collaboration with Microsoft and Google. So that's bringing together the best that we can in hardware and CPU spec to really facilitate the resources we require for each application. We're using Azure Stack HCI and Google Distributed Cloud to provide the base hypervisor layer. Buzzwords.
Can you translate that, Scott, later? Yeah.
Scott's going to tell us what it means later. On how we deploy those virtual compute, that virtual network layer, and have everything speak to each other and be redeployable and changeable on the fly as we need to. We're using local NDI sources that can speak to all the different applications. We're not trying to ring fence or create little empires of different vendors. We're trying to have all the vendors speak to each other. And NDI was chosen as that sort of common interchange format for this sort of mid-low tier production environment. We wanted to provide access to cloud-based distribution, so the actual cloud, let's say, so that we could potentially leverage a hybrid approach where we have edge compute doing our actual production in this case, but we can still send on to the actual cloud, as we'll see in a second, for maybe graphics or handoff or something like that. And of course, we wanted to build a demo here at IBC so we could actually interact with that ecosystem. So this is the diagram. Hopefully everyone can see it.
Quite small, obviously. This will be available as part of the deck afterwards on our website. Why don't you talk us through this? I think just before that, I think it's important, something you said there is that we, the champions certainly wanted to see a multi-vendor, cloud-agnostic approach, and I think that's been one of the key aims of this. So you go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
And it's been an awesome and massive collaborative effort from folks at Azure, the folks at Google, and everybody involved from a participants front to look at how we can do this together. So not only does my application run on this compute, but actually how would we do that efficiently? How would we speak to that other device, whatever it might be? So jumping into the diagram, I'll sort of do a left to right. On the left, we have some NDI playout that the folks at Viz provided. Thank you, Liam. So we could have some other NDI sources to show if we had multiple cameras or multiple feeds on site, because we only had one NDI camera. But it is a PTZ camera, and we can control it remotely, which is an awesome part of this sort of low to mid-tier production, where we need to be able to go further than just putting lots of people on site. We need to be able to also potentially move cameras around. We have some miscellaneous functions that don't have the little red feed on it that might be for stream monitoring. They might be talkback in this case, or network monitoring, because one of the key things that we find is you definitely need some visibility of your network, of your compute, of your applications in order to know whether things are running. As we move to this software world, we can't just rely on an integration telling us everything's good, because actually we need to understand what's happening at all layers. On the sort of middle then is the edge compute itself, provided by Azure and Google. This is how we run the actual production infrastructure, so everything critical that we wanted to test. And as Mark was saying, of course, we wanted to take a multi-vendor approach and make sure that we had everybody talking to each other in some common format. So we have the guys from Llama providing some really awesome audio mixing capability with all the mix effects and everything you'd expect from a real production requirement. We have GV and Viz providing awesome graphics and vision mixing capability. Both can do a bit of everything, so it's an awesome chance to really get into the weeds and understand how we can use both together effectively. Struggling to see who else we've got in there. Yep, that's great. We've got on the right, we've got Zixi and ourselves. We also provide some software, providing some distribution capability so that we can send those feeds somewhere else. Once we've produced the content, we need to distribute it or effectively contribute it somewhere else. So in this particular use case, although it's very interchangeable, Zixi is sending some feeds into a cloud environment so that they can use their platform to integrate with Singular Live for graphics. That is awesome, thank you. I can see the diagram. So we can see some additional Singular Live graphics, HTML rendered on those feeds, or potentially using InSync for a frame rate or standards conversion to hand off into different platforms that might have different requirements. And then coming to the RAI for our demo, we're using our TX Edge platform to bring SRT feeds from that edge compute into the RAI itself. We're using the Open Broadcast Services decoder, OBD, to decode those feeds onto an SDI monitor that you can see behind us in the zone. And we're also using a lot of the awesome Viz hardware and software platforms to allow you to actually control those cameras, mix those cameras in that particular ecosystem. So NDI Bridge has been quite integral to how we can make all of this demo come together, which I know Liam will obviously talk about shortly. But that's one of the beating hearts. And then of course we've got some remote KVM access and things like that. That's effectively what the demo looks like today.
Amazing. So we can see this element of it here at the RAI. Just behind us on the accelerator zone, you'll see the Connect and Produce Anywhere, and the demo is there. And you've been in the weeds of this, haven't you, Liam? I'll just bring you in. Tell us a little bit about the setup there and some of the things that we've kind of had to overcome in terms of the eve of the show and getting ready and last minute.
At this end, it's all quite lightweight. So we have a flex control surface talking to the local network. We're running NDI bridge back to TechX in Bracknell. So we've kind of got the point-to-point bidirectional control there. And as Ben said, then we're landing SRT back at the booth. So for the demo to run all of that technology down in Bracknell, it's just one control panel, one laptop and two Intel NUCs. So very, very compact, very lightweight. unsurprisingly, we didn't really have that much of a challenge with the bandwidth between the RAI. I think it's a 30 meg line. I think we've got to the booth, 30
30
megabit.
megs, yeah, 30 megs, yeah.
Yeah, so we were in a constrained bandwidth, but we're managing to pass everything back and forth. I think the only big challenge we've run into here live is if something goes down at the edge and there's no one there to reboot it, we can work around it. So we managed to spin up instances elsewhere and reconnect everything quite quickly. But is that thing that even though you're doing remote and on the edge production, we definitely do need people on the ground there to reboot something once in a while. You're always going to run into that. So we've learned quite a bit about that on the resiliency side as well. So.
Before we go to Scott, why NDI only? Why was this? Will we get to the other elements, other formats?
It's not NDI. It's multi-format, but in order to kind of get somewhere where we could deliver it, we had to settle on, as everyone has done, you kind of have to make a decision. You can't boil the ocean, so you have to go, okay, well, it's going to be HD. It could have been UHD, could be 10K, it could be 8K, whatever. It doesn't really matter. And NDI was the place where we found the most commonalities. And we're all very familiar with JPEG XS and 2110 and SRT streams and all of those. And our aim is to kind of get to that place. Yeah. But we didn't want to be constrained about building an NDI workflow or building a 2110 workflow or whatever. The whole point of this is it's about end user choice. Yeah. And that's the bit we want to get to. None of that should matter. It's IP. It's just ones and noughts. There might be more of them, but we just need to kind of work out how we move them around.
Scott,
yeah. And on that, we've done some testing in 2110 and SDI, Ingress, and NDI and other types, and blending all those together it's not impossible. It's a little over the horizon, and to try and get this going in a crawl, walk, run approach, trying to do all at once. Too much, too fast, too soon. NDI is a wonderful choice to start with.
I think we'll come to this at the end in terms of key learnings, but I think it was just amazing how I think we found it was like complex it was to build this infrastructure and to bring it all together. I mean, we this is an accelerator and it's all about fast track, but getting the kit was a challenge, wasn't it? And you were instrumental in helping. Here we see actually that's Chris Hampard-Soonian. I don't know if Chris is here. Are you here, Chris? Is he in bed? Okay. He's from Google on the right hand side. He literally had to go down to Heathrow and get this through the customs just to get this kit. And it was lots of this going on just over the last few months of assembling the right kit that works together as well. Talk a bit about that, Scott.
Well, yeah, there was nothing like being on holidays in Canada and trying to arrange with marketing to get the chassis sent to Bracknell and finding out that somebody didn't bother sending network cards. And so it was a lot of fun. The challenge with something like this is getting it specified correctly. Obviously, Microsoft has HCI chassis. We work with them all the time. When I talk to the team that does the HCI workflows, typically they're working with things like Cosmos DB and small-scale services. When we started speccing out things like video switchers, and we started talking about how much compute we needed and the fact we needed that big of a GPU in there, they were like, what exactly are you doing with this box? And we started explaining to them, they were a little boggled because they're used to scoping out something quite petite. We went double extra large, maybe with a bit of cheese, and they were a little surprised with what we're doing. By the time we got through it, they realized that in their own lab, they didn't have anything that could support it. So we had to go do a lot of playing hide and go seek with getting a box and making a really quick call to our friends at NVIDIA going, I need another couple of GPU cards really quickly, which they supplied as well, which was very handy. And then you guys were great because we didn't have NIC cards for at least one of the chassis, and you're like, no problem, we had to have them on shelf. It was a little bit of hide and go seek finding parts.
A big shout out to our friends at AMD as well in terms of getting machines and servers and John Canning down here, because that was another complex.
AMD provided us a chassis as well at the last minute, so that was a wonderful extra bit of help of there. So without these guys, we don't get it done. There's so many people in the industry who basically stuck up their hand and went, I've got a part, I can do this. I think even the BBC at some point in time, you're going to loan us a couple of input.
We have some stuff stuck in a drawer, not doing it.
Yeah. We've got to get to the place where we're taking actual SDI into these chassis. You guys have some cards that go into this box. We're not done yet. We've got a long ways to go. We're going to find more parts that we need to stick in these boxes.
So do you want to talk us through, while you're on, Scott, talk us through the
oh, sure.
The Azure
this is Ian's favorite slide because it has all the words he loves. Hypervisor,
Love a
It's
hyperconverged.
management.
Maybe more
One of the, I'm a broadcast media architect. I'm a lines of resolution and audio sample guy, and I work in a cloud company. I am the goose amongst all the beautiful swans who are talking about cloud all along. They use words all day long that I'm finding myself using, and I'm like, I don't even sometimes know the words coming out of my mouth what they mean. It's management. And what is a hyperconverged infrastructure? We take a lot of computer and stuff and stick it in one box, okay? And don't get too hung up with the fact that this is a Microsoft slide. Our friends at Google provided a similar box. They've got the same sort of thing. Basically, we're taking a whole bunch of network, compute, storage, memory, GPU, and rather than putting a whole bunch of boxes all over the place, we're sticking it in one box so you can manage it simply. Yeah, there's more complexity to that, but just go with that for today. The whole point is we're taking the cloud and we're sticking it on-prem. Rather than having to go, oh look, you've got a bunch of media and you have to pick it up and take it from over there and take it all the way across that network, which may not exist, and push it over here. We're saying, no, let's put the cloud near the media and do the functionalities we can over there, and then backhaul what we need to wherever we need it. And we need some way to manage it. In our world, we call that ARC, Azure Resource Controller. Our friends at Google have Anthos. It's simply a methodology to say, look, you've got on-premises stuff, you've got this edge stuff, or as Dion likes to call it, the fog. I had to get that out there because I know it's going to drive Ian crazy. Multi-cloud stuff. You got to control your stuff wherever it is, and it shouldn't matter where it is. In my cloud, in Google Cloud, because I heard today it's not GCP anymore, so shout out to my friends at Google, or another cloud. Look, you've got to manage your resources where they are. You've got to manage what you've got already, VMs that exist already, virtual servers, whatever you got. You've got to be able to manage that as well as these edge devices. That's all these things are, like ARC or Anthos. Those processes exist so you can move your resources, manage resources, understand how you build, manage, and control it. It's just the management layer beyond the Kubernetes management control that we do down low in the VM world. Now we're doing the management layer above that to go, what am I doing everywhere? What's my vision to that? And gives you a nice, beautiful vision. And I think there's actually a view that you're going to go through now.
So on the left there, we've got our rack in Bracknell. We've got a number of different servers, the 3 big 2U units from Azure, a couple of units from GV, and a couple of units from Google, managing these different stacks. And what's the magic of Anthos and Arc is that we can take those clusters, we can build them, we can build in the resilience in the cluster, in the network, and all the good stuff that you should do when you build private cloud or public cloud, and have a layer above that, as Scott says, to deploy in and out of that cluster, albeit remote or on-site, whatever it might be. So we can build our VMs in the cloud or locally, we can store them as images, we can deploy them on and off that instance as we see fit, which gives us total flexibility. It's effectively a blank slate that we can build up every time we want to do a show or every time we want to do something. Today I need this vision mixer because it has that particular graphics integration. Tomorrow it's a different audio, whatever it might be. But both platforms allow you to do that within those stacks. And additionally, as Scott's saying, you can effectively cross-platform those. So say we want to use Arc to deploy something on the Google stack, we could potentially do that to move the VMs across total cloud domains, as Scott says. So we're giving ultimate flexibility in where you can actually do that production at multiple levels, right? It's not just the application, but we're talking about virtual compute resourcing and things like that.
Awesome. That one I think was one that you were going to talk to again, Scott. Were you the last one? That one there?
Actually, no.
No. Okay, fine. That's good.
It's one of those slides, this one, that kind of crept into the deck, and we all think it says something. None of us are quite sure what it says. But it's got lots of great words on it, like Kubernetes. Anyone really good with Kubernetes? I love a Kubernetes.
There's some great words on the slide. None of us even put it in there.
Yeah. Multi-cluster fleet automation. There you go. Get yourself some of that.
That's a great slide. Let's move on to the next one.
Sorry.
Missing hypervisor there.
Yeah,
Quickly.
No hypervisors. Sorry.
So, I think there's 2 slides on this because there's this is what it's all about. Really, is not always successes, failures, and learning from them, but also kind of like things that you pull your hair out over. What are some of the things that we've learned here on this project?
So I mean, the big thing for me is actually it's great to be able to do this in an environment. When I look at innovation, I kind of look at actually setting a vision, and then you've got to verify that vision, and then you've got to validate it. and then you can talk about it. But actually, where we are at this stage is we had this great vision about a year ago. We've now gotten to the stage where we're starting to verify that as a vision, and hey, this is really exciting. We now need to validate that, and that's the bit that we would have liked to have got to by now. But I think through various reasons, we haven't got there, and that just proves the ambition, really. If we could have stepped out in April and delivered this overnight, as everyone sort of almost said we could, that would have been a great learning and a great demo, but probably pretty similar to a lot of other things you've seen around it. But actually, in getting together and doing all these things, we all fed in these requirements. We've learned a load of stuff. So, observability of the network was one I think you guys came up with.
So when Mark called us up last December and we went through some of the stuff, we on the Microsoft side, we started setting up a lab and we said, well, let's kick this off and do this. And we got engaged by some other folks in the industry to say, yeah, this looks really good. And we went and did a project very much like this. And through that process and actually building a system that pretty much mirrors what we're doing here, whenever we had a problem, I'm used to in the cloud environments that we've got a set of people really worried about, is my network working? Is my cloud working? And then underneath that, are my services that are serving media, are those working? When we start getting to this hybrid world where we now have an edge going on and a cloud going on, that network layer between the two becomes much more increasingly, not fragile is the wrong word, but much more susceptible to impedance, for lack of a better term. And if you don't have great observability through the entire stack of what you're doing there, you will run into trouble, and you will spend a lot of time trying to debug it in a way that you think you're solving things, but you're really missing the point. So we're finding that if you don't have observability in the network at all levels, you will spend a lot of time missing things. So you really have to have observability in the software-defined network at all levels, including what's going on your switch, what's going on inside the chassis itself, and anything you defined in that world at a much deeper layer. And you've got to find tools from vendors out there that are really good. There's somebody that's out there right now with Switch.io that actually has a series of tools out there. Zixie's got some great tools. You guys, some of your tools are very, very good for that. You really have to be able to dig in and know what's going on in that network. Deeply.
That's one bullet point of many, so I'm gonna.
Sorry.
Yeah. Well, then this next one actually that I really love is Scott and I were sat across the room and he said SDI is a pain, and I went, no, SDI is great. Why is SDI such a? And then we had a discussion about it, and actually it was really what's the pain is actually this kind of mixed environment that we live in where we're trying to kind of do software only stuff, and then we've got this kind of legacy SDI, and it was one of the all of these different things that we have to convert with gateways and then translate stuff and then added metadata and take metadata. SDI is brilliant. I love it. I understand it. It hasn't got any hypervisors. It's just great. But actually it's really hard in this world. And then touching on Claire's point, we were talking about actually sustainability. Well, we need to do stuff. We all say this is more sustainable, but actually we need to measure that. And,
we'll come. I think there's a bit of a discussion at the end about what we'll do next.
We'll do that. This standardized container type deployment, I was talking about Kubernetes earlier. Apparently it's a box that you can put some software in and stuff like that. But actually we need to understand that. But it turns out apparently it's a really good way of deploying these types of things, and you just box stuff up and drop it in. And so those types of deployments are going to be more interesting for us, and we need to move towards those. And then open APIs. Oh God. Not all APIs are equal. Most of them tend to have come from a manufacturer-led thing rather than an end-user perspective. And I know our friends in the Gallery Agnostic project also came across some of this stuff. This world is not as open as it needs to be, and there is not enough of the voice of the end-user in describing how we want to use these APIs. They're all about, hey, I've got some APIs here, and my kit can talk to everyone else's kit. But actually, I'm led to believe that may or may not be true. But I'll let others talk about it. And then we've got all these other learnings and stuff like that as well. I mean, I think we touched on it earlier, logistics sometimes of actually doing this type of projects.
Painful, very painful.
What are your key learnings from this, Liam? In addition to some of these things, what have you kind of feel you've had an inside track on here?
I really echo what Ian was saying. It's basically around sort of when we're trying to mix software platforms within these virtualized stacks. It's all good when each vendor's saying, hey, we have our own cloud instance, we can host it for you in this set way. But as soon as we start bringing it down to the edge, there's a lot more variability. So that whole containerization piece is something I'll be taking back to my colleagues in BizRT to say, right, how are we going to standardize that so it is more throwable? And we have proved here that we can throw services up and down and use different elements. So this morning, Bridge had an issue back at TechX. We haven't got anyone there, but we could start an instance up in the cloud to connect back to the edge, and we're back up and running. So there's a lot of deployability and flexibility within that. But I think the other biggest thing that I want to continue us all looking at is that sustainability side of it, the measurement. We had some quite interesting conversations around an OB setup for any type of event. Each broadcaster would have their own van, their own generators, their own wiring and power supply. And with these kind of virtualized approaches on the edge, maybe people could start collaborating. 2 virtual OB vans could live in one stack with 2 generators for failover or different iterations thereof. So we can actually really reduce not just the travel footprint of what we're doing here, but also the actual overall energy use, make it more quantifiable. And I think there's a lot of groundwork that, once we finally get these stacks up and running and really start playing with them, then I think there's a whole ton of opportunity I don't think we've even thought about yet for those different aspects.
So where next, really? Where does the project go next? I think it's a lot of effort, a lot of cost, a lot of expense, a lot of time and effort that's gone and building this and creating it. What happens with the kit that we've got at TechX next? This approach.
So the first thing is I've got to read the hypervisor user manual, but after that, we're going to be continuing this kind of test bed type stuff. Because actually what we realised we built here is actually a really great environment where we can sort of test some of these workflows. And I think actually all the champions are in agreement that one of the things that we want to do is play with this stuff more, but in a slightly less risky environment than a real world production. So we like the idea, we like the concept, we think there's some great things going on here, but all of us I think have come back and said, we want to explore more and different types of options. We want to actually deploy this in a real-world solution, and Claire's keen on that, and we're keen at that with BBC Scotland, and I know others are. We need to put more of these kind of connectivity types in. So we knew this when we get to any of you who've ever been involved in this type of thing. You have to make go-no decisions at certain points, and just limit your scope. So, but we want to pick that up. Environmental monitoring, really important, this one, but really understanding the difference between sunk carbon as well, and the cost of actually having a scanner sat in a car park with a whole bunch of kit on it that takes a load of carbon to bed, but it's sat in a car park from Monday to Friday and goes out. I know that's not, but there's quite a lot of that happens. And actually, if I've got to have one in Liverpool and one in London, well, actually, if I've got an edge compute, I can just sort of share those resources a lot more interesting. So we think there's a whole bunch of sustainability and environmental issues, but we want to work out how to ask the right questions.
So let's talk about that while we're here. I'll keep saying we'll come back to it. Claire, I mean, how much measurement have you done at Limitless in terms of some of the productions that and have you got some data to kind of fall back on and say, look, I think we're going in the right direction with this. There's still a lot to understand, right? All the data centers and all that sort of element of it. But how far have you got so far, do you think? And what can we do with this once we get this the workflow established and matured? What can we do next from a measurement point of view?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we're sort of going further down this route as a company, this is really important to us, and being able to go back to our clients and say, this is the carbon footprint and this is what you're working with. It's something that we are developing at the moment, and is something that we've been playing with, but it's it feels almost endless, because you've still got data centers and servers spinning up and down, all of that. So it's looking at our on-site footprint. We know kind of what that is, and we've got a handle on that. We're taking away the scanner, we're taking away the tender vehicle, the uplink truck, and the generators, and we're running now on a sustainable battery usage. But it's also looking at, if we're rolling that out as a service, we need to know the whole kind of tentacles of the operation and where those extra bits of carbon are creeping in, so we can make sure that we are truly a sustainable broadcast company operation.
So I guess we could take that kit and some of those servers and things and put them in a Limitless remote production van and take it on the road to production. Is that is that a next step? How long will it take us to get this to that stage?
So
Do you think estimate? Time?
we need a little time to upskill a little bit more on getting the chassis up into the proper state. But we've talked with the champions about this, and we've talked with our leadership, and we're committed to a time frame of a few more months to go get this up and running. And we want to get this in the van and get going because we think there's a lot to do here. I mean, I've had a chance to talk a little bit with Limitless about what their green initiatives are. Some of the metrics we can provide back with what the cost modeling we do in terms of how much power and usage you're getting out of these chassis, I think feeds back to what she's doing. We're very green committed as well. We think there's a lot of stuff we can do. So I think we're probably about 6 months away from a place where we can actually stick them in a van and go, we've loaded software on here, we're running, let's take a look. 6 months is, I'm being.
You told me October.
Yeah.
I think we can do it. I think we can do it quicker than that, Scott.
Yeah.
Come on, let's get chatting.
I'm pregnant. How long did it take us to get service?
This is true.
Well, with all the hard work and the time constraints, the time consuming elements of this, of getting this kit together. So let's see where we can go with it. But I think this began life, if I remember, it began life as and you can go back to one of our, actually I should mention our media partner, SVG, because that's the sports video group who have been sort of following this project. Actually, if you go back to December, you'll see an article about when the champions first came together, and that was Sky and BT Sport they were then, and Warner Brothers Discovery, and thank you John Hale if he's not here. John Hale at Warner Brothers was instrumental in getting this off the ground and pitching it with you, Ian. I think should mention him. And it began as a sort of sports project, didn't it? Sky Sports, and it was all about these bandwidth constrained, say, football matches or cycling in Scotland, or some of the more bandwidth constrained. It was I think the original title for this was a software defined production in a bandwidth constrained location, which is a really snappy title for this, but it became Connect and Produce Anywhere. But it is very much sports related, but it has lots of other connotations as well, right? I mean, cultural events in North Wales, for example, it's going to be much more, bringing a lot more accessibility.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, we obviously do more. We do lots of events, we do lots of sport, but actually, the reality is that we kind of know how to do. I'm going to use the word low scale, but I don't mean that. The things that are that we want to do in high volume, but we can't afford to send an 8-camera scanner and all that kind of stuff. We know how to do the high end stuff, and we do that. But is this kind of whole untapped middle ground, whether that's in minority sports, whether that's in sort of arts and theatre, whether that's in cultural events, whether that's in sort of side events at music festivals, whether that's, we want to do more stuff, and the world's demand is actually what we as broadcasters do really well is live, and we need to kind of keep that momentum to sort of driving our live offering to our audiences.
Go ahead.
And just on the back of that as well, I think it's also making sure that even as we're rolling this across kind of 6 to 8 camera OBs and looking to scale that up, it's maintaining that production value and making sure that even though the scanner or the truck is not on site, it's still making that experience seamless as though it were there.
We did talk. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, if the scanner's on site, where do I put the coffee machine?
Well, we bring one.
Okay,
the hypervisor.
The hypervisor. Okay.
I was going to say one of the things we have touched on, but we haven't mentioned much here, is a kind of a cost assessment, which I think we've talked about.
Yeah.
I think that's something else the project needs to come back to and sort of assess.
Yeah, the business models
case,
are really interesting. And we came into it, actually, we bought it in one of our standard OBs for BBC Scotland football match, which we had the kind of templated spec sheet for 8 cameras, kind of relatively small constrained thing. And that for us is our kind of benchmarky kind of bit, okay, about how can we do this more sustainably, more cost effectively, and in a more desirable way, because actually, doing this stuff is kind of our bread and butter, really. And so we've got that as our kind of baseline SDI measurement. But then when I speak to Dion, when I speak to OBS and I speak to others, but one of the things we all do is we take a world feed of stuff. Actually, can we, instead of just taking it at the world feed point, can we take it further down the channel? And there will be all sorts of rights issues and stuff like that. But we can start to use kind of security things on there. And if Sky want to run VisRT solution and we want to run a Grass Valley one and somebody else wants to run another vendor's solution, then we can, in theory, we can make those choices and stuff like that. So that's going to fundamentally change business models about how we share this.
What's your instinct on this? Anyone really? I mean, in terms of, does it feel like this is a really cost-effective solution compared to today's other approaches?
So one of the things we've really been asked to do is, could we start building this for shared infrastructure for people who run multiple OBs? So coming out of the U.S. market, where you'll have a home and away broadcaster, and they've got the same piece of equipment doing the same thing and by the same vendor, and they're going, well, why do we have the same thing in two trucks when we're using the same thing? Why can't there just be one of them and we share it? That's one of the challenges we're being asked to solve in a very similar thing, because they're starting to realize, hey, this costs a lot of money and the money's not there anymore. So that's going to happen one way or the other. It's not a choice of if it will happen. It's like, no, we have to go solve it. So we have to do it, and we have to make it cost effective. So it's not a choice. It's a got to do it.
But there's also an element of, even if we're not showing amongst broadcasters, quite often we'll have to provide feeds for a big screen, or we'll have to do VAR, via refereeing stuff, and actually we can send that back without, we can just give them those feeds locally, and they can use their tools if they've got the right APIs to connect into our existing sources without us having to think about that in some ways. So there'll be some kind of advantages and thoughts around that, but that's going to take kind of conversations with.
And I think, sorry.
Yeah, go for it, Ben.
Yeah, the last thing is really, one of the core fundamentals that we built this project around was flexible licensing, right? So if we have to build a fleet of OBs to handle, and cloud production and central production, whatever it is, to accommodate these events, or we can buy the number of licenses we need and facilitate deploying them where they're actually needed, that allows us to focus our costs into more useful things, right? We want to spend the money on the production kit so that we can get the best quality. That's where we want the money to be, not in just numbers. We want it to be in investing in that software and the development of that, making it optimized for these kind of workflows.
I don't want a 50-channel vision mixer for a 3-camera OB.
Yeah.
Claire, go for it, yeah.
And then I think what's really interesting is that there needs to be an education for all our production companies, production managers, for example, who control the budgets. If it's a different pricing model, there's training that goes into how do we do a big scale outside broadcast with multiple people involved, multiple truck companies, etc. Those budgets are very defined. And this is a different pricing structure. And if we're moving into this new space, this new seismic shift in broadcast technology, all of that needs to change as well. So it's looking not just necessarily as a defined day rate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess collaboration amongst broadcasters on productions isn't necessarily new, but this way of working, could it really drive big change in the way that you share the infrastructure for a lot more of events and
okay, so I think from a technology point of view, yes. Obviously there's commercial, there's legal, there's rights, there's a whole bunch of other things that go into that. But we do, we share world feeds all the time. We share graphics feeds, we share data feeds, and that increasingly for us is the most important thing that we get out of any of these things, is actually metadata and tagging, and that'll be part of some of the stuff that we look at about how do we, once we're in this IP world, how do we containerize metadata and do live tag? But that's next year.
What about audio?
Audio, we love audio. I mean, look, audio is challenging. We know that, but actually what quite often we have is different types of audio. So you might have the match effects audio, you might have local presentation, you might have audio coming in from VT. It's like an old thing, you wouldn't know about that. So yeah, you've got all of these different things coming together. VT was what we used to do before we had hypervisors, and virtual tape or something. So yeah, you've got all of these different functions and how an audio and then talkback and latency of comms and talkback and all of that kind of stuff. So audio is a challenge, but what we're starting to see, and everyone's telling us, audio is really hard, but we're starting to see some really interesting things from Audinate and Arvo, some of the partners around actually, how can we do that, and using some of the sort of Dante stuff and things like that. It's starting to get quite interesting.
Audio being one of the core challenges, because how we do audio and how you build audio mixes requires a very different approach with a hypervisor. No, not with a hypervisor, but with how you route the information from edge to core requires some really different thoughts. People typically take a single vision mix, but they may take multiple audio mixes. how people would like to do that requires a different way of thinking about it. And we're going to have to we may have to go back and rethink what we want to do and why we want to do it. And shared feeds may not work, or we might not know yet.
Yeah.
And I think that this goes back to the bit where we were saying a lot about where we split audio and video off each other in these edge situations, that we start running into timing and drift, and then how do we reassemble that accurately? And I think BBC have been doing some work around some of that as well. But trying to bring them back together again when they have to follow through these paths and these types of workflows is a challenge we need to look at, and that's going to be how do we start interchanging data between the different vendors, the different platforms to make that more possible and more accurate and consistent, really, is the biggest bit.
Imagine if there was time code.
Oh, exactly.
Frame rate conversion.
So, will there be a technical paper on this, some form of paper about what some of these learnings? And by the way, congratulations on winning the best technical project for last year. Related to last year's project.
Related, I mean, that wasn't all me. That was some rather clever colleagues. I'm in the fortunate position. I just come up with stupid ideas, and then clever people who understand things like hypervisors get together and build stuff. But I think I mean the whole point of this is we need to document some of this, and I think I mean the thing for us is about sharing these learnings and stuff like that. So we'll probably try and sort of do this. For us, this is about open R&D. So it's about kind of shared experiences, and actually the real interesting thing for me is when you combine certain things. So we combine the gallery agnostic project. We start to see some of the same problems around APIs. We start to think about tagging metadata. We get into responsive narrative factory. We start to think about connectivity, and we get into some of the stuff on some of the other booths as well. So all of this stuff sort of starts to come together, and we'll think about that. But somebody will write something.
I'm sure of it. But the presentation you see here will be on the Accelerator, the project page on the Accelerator pages on the IBC site. What can we see? The guys, we want everybody to come and see the demo and actually see it in action, I guess. And you'll be there, Liam, to talk people through it, amongst others. We should mention Peter Brightwell from BBC because
Peter's done a brilliant job.
He's done a brilliant job on bringing it together. He's down there at the if you want to go and see the demo of it.
He's the one who understands.
He's there. He's the man in the know. I think other than that, anything else you guys wanted to add to this as a learning, as an experience of working together, as an achievement, I think, in bringing this together? What are your thoughts? Let's just go down the line.
I mean, we'll keep participating in these. I mean, it's a rare opportunity to get with the different vendors and end users together in this group and just say, what if? And throw things around and not be afraid for things to maybe sometimes go wrong and learn from it. These shows where there's a lot of focus on perfection, and these are great opportunities to experiment and take us in some new directions. And I think this project's got a fantastic future ahead of it, really. So
thanks, Liam.
I think learning from each other has been a really big thing for me. So I come from a production background, an operational background, so getting to talk with you guys and just meet in person has been really valuable. So thank you.
More. Let's do more.
You want to do more, Scott. You want more pain. You want more.
More pain.
Yeah.
But echoing a lot of what Claire said,
Yeah.
it's a chance to actually get and meet people who are, frankly, we get a little bit behind our walls sometimes.
Yeah.
So actually meeting people who actually do something is really nice.
Yeah, thank you, Scott, and thanks for everything. And Ben?
I think it's been really awesome to collaborate with so many people who are so willing to get stuck in, provide technology, provide time to build these platforms. So as Liam was saying about open R&D, it isn't sort of superficial. We got in to make the project. Everyone really mucked in to actually build something and come up with plans for what we're going to do next and where we need to learn that. And we've done a lot of cloud, we've done a lot of virtual projects, but actually diving deeper into building the cloud, even if it's at the edge, is a lot more to learn for all of us broadcast engineers.
And I guess TechX has been across the gallery agnostic project as well as this one, so kind of lots of cross learnings across those projects for you guys. I guess that's good to see. Be good to sort of assess some of those common elements of this, APIs, for example. Yeah.
Certainly, the open API side of things, being able to not just integrate at sort of a data layer like NDI is doing, it's allowing to speak to each other, but actually orchestrate and I guess manage an entire state, whatever it might be, in an efficient way that also doesn't require lots of custom development. It takes time that you don't have in an events-based world.
Ian? It's a broad question.
No, I mean, for me, I think this is the opportunity. If I deployed this on a production, the reality is that we'd have probably gone out into the production and just gone, this doesn't work, and we put it away in a box, and then for the next 10 years we'd be going, this will never work. because we tried it and it didn't work. We tried it, we didn't work. We're brilliant at that in the broadcasting industry. Going, yeah, we tried that, it didn't work, and then we don't see what all of these other clever people. So actually, just having a go and actually being able to try stuff and seeing it not working, and then go, okay, why is it not working? How can we do that? So for me, and then having that conversation with peers around that for me is
Awesome.
is key.
Yeah, awesome. I want to thank you all, Liam. Thank you very much for all the hard work and effort, all of you actually, and for being here today. And thanks for a great panel, Claire and Scott and Ben and Ian. Thank you, and thank you to all of our other champions and everybody that's been involved in this. It's been quite a road, quite a journey since last December, and we'll be also talking to SVG, and they'll be writing a piece on this as well. Other than that.
Does everyone know what a hypervisor is?
Yeah, other than that, look forward to maybe seeing a real life production sometime before Christmas, maybe.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah. And but watch this space. I mean, what we've got now is not an accelerator, but it's an incubator, and I think that's the key thing here, and it's probably unique in the industry terms in that regard. So I know if you agree with me, but on that note,
I don't want to make such a bold claim, but yeah.
On that note, thank you very much. Thank you for being here. You can find out more about this on the Accelerator page on the IBC site, or come to the booth and see the other great 7 projects as well as this one. So thank you very much, everybody. Hope you enjoy the rest of your IBC. It's been a pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye.